Insurgents recently struck Gibo, resulting in a tragic loss of life among the soldiers. But here's the twist. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, despite being the intended target, wasn't listed among the casualties. Was this attack really about Gibo, or was it a calculated move to unsettle Burkina Faso's leadership? Let's dive in and unravel the real story. The headlines were quick to scream chaos, a violent assault on a military base, dozens of dead, and the attackers slipping away into the night. But as we look beyond the destruction in Gibo, there's something much colder lurking beneath the surface. This wasn't just a typical attack, it was a carefully crafted trap. And the one they aimed to draw out? Traoré. Take a closer look. The insurgents didn't bother with the usual tactics. No territory was seized. No civilians were taken hostage. There was no looting or flag planting. What they did was something more strategic. They hit hard, filmed the destruction, and then vanished. What they left behind wasn't just chaos, it was a void, a crisis with no clear face. As expected, foreign media jumped on the story. Headlines painted the picture of Burkina Faso losing its grip, insurgents on the rise, and whispers began, "Is Traoré faltering?" But hold up, this isn't just insurgency, this was provocation at its finest. The attack wasn't aimed at Gibo, it was a direct challenge to Traoré. A move designed to provoke him into a mistake, to create doubt, to stir up internal and external whispers. The idea was simple. If you can make people question his invincibility, you can begin to shake his hold on power. And it almost worked. Within 2 days, reports surfaced of unusual diplomatic activity, an uptick in confidential communications, secretive intelligence shifts, and covert outreach to moderate factions within Burkina Faso's government. It was clear Gibo had opened the door for a soft coup to take root. This strategy, it's as old as time. It's a playbook that's been used for decades. First, a national figure rises. He champions land, pride, and independence, making deals that bypass foreign powers. He gains the support of the rural poor and urban youth. He becomes a symbol, not just for his country, but for the broader African cause. And then, just when the figure is strongest, the enemies emerge. Sometimes they wear military uniforms, other times NGO badges, or they simply let chaos take its course. But their goal is always the same: to undermine the symbol, shake its foundation, and remove the leader, without creating a martyr in the process. Traoré has become that symbol. Gibo was their first move to destabilize his image. The goal? To drag him into a desperate war, drain his resources, force him to seek international assistance, or, ideally, trigger internal divisions that remove him from power, all without a single foreign hand being stained. Right now, Traoré is surrounded by shadows. Advisors are raising alarms. Surveillance drones are reportedly hovering around Traoré's motorcade routes. Communications are being blocked in critical border regions. Meanwhile, international agencies are offering support packages, but the fine print hides strings that could tie his hands. The real battle is no longer taking place at the front lines. It's shifting closer to the president's seat. Now, the key question is whether Traoré can see this for what it truly is, a trap. The pressure is on, and the clock is ticking. He has to stay one step ahead, or risk losing it all. Because Gibo wasn't just a one-off attack. It was the opening move in a much larger game, one that doesn't end with a single strike. And if Traoré makes the wrong move now, they won't need to fire another shot. The game will be over before he even realizes it. If you are still watching this video, it means you love it. Why not take a second and hit the like button? Have you done that? Let's continue now. Burkina Faso's borders remain untouched by foreign armies. No nation has openly declared war. And yet, Ibrahim Traoré finds himself increasingly cornered. This is how modern coups unfold, not with tanks or missiles, but through a subtle web of tension and silence. Since the attack on Gibo, the pressure has shifted from the front lines to Traoré himself. It's no longer about armed conflict. It's about the slow, suffocating build-up of influence, happening behind closed doors, in boardrooms and diplomatic meetings. It starts quietly, in the corridors of international finance. Since the attack, foreign investors have begun pulling away from key infrastructure projects. Development banks have reassessed their risk, quietly marking Burkina Faso as unstable. Insurance premiums for regional trade routes have shot up. On the surface, it all looks like cautious financial decision-making. But in reality, it's economic pressure wrapped in the guise of prudence. Traoré's refusal to submit to IMF demands has put him on a collision course with the international financial system. The country is now facing a liquidity freeze without a single formal sanction. Gold trade slows, mining operations stall, subcontractors pack up and leave. It all sends the same message: you can't survive without us. But the siege doesn't stop there. It's just as much diplomatic as it is economic. Since the Guibo attack, Western diplomats have gone eerily quiet. Embassies have reduced their interactions. No words of sympathy, no promises of support. Just a carefully calculated absence that speaks volumes. Behind the scenes, the pressure is ramping up. Reports suggest that Western envoys are urging neighbouring leaders to distance themselves from Burkina Faso, painting Traoré as reckless, unstable, and a threat to regional peace. The objective? Containment. Isolation. If they can't oust him, they'll make him a pariah. Meanwhile, a more insidious battle is unfolding: narrative warfare. After Guibo, the headlines were swift and damning: Traoré losing control, security failing in Burkina Faso. But take a closer look. Few, if any, of these reports came from local sources. Most relied on anonymous analysts or external agencies, often funneled through Western news channels. This isn't just biased reporting. It's a calculated effort to undermine Traoré's legitimacy. If the world starts to believe that he's losing control, the dominoes will fall. Allies will hesitate, investments will freeze, and local confidence will waver. The real danger here is how this external pressure begins to chip away at Traoré's support from within. Internal actors who once stood firmly by his side now face a growing temptation to bend to the weight of these mounting pressures. And that's when the real danger begins. Bureaucrats who once swore allegiance now stay silent in meetings. Regional governors start dragging their feet, stalling on orders. Military officers, once focused on defending the nation, now hesitate, worried about being blacklisted by foreign powers. This is how isolation becomes a stranglehold. This is how a revolution suffocates without a single shot being fired. Yet, Traoré stands firm. And perhaps that's the real frustration for those trying to undo him. The Guibo attack didn't trap him. The financial squeeze hasn't broken his resolve. The media storm has failed to shake him. But make no mistake, they are still tightening the noose, quietly, constantly, with unrelenting patience. The pressure is mounting inch by inch. If they can't make him fall, they'll simply cut him off, piece by piece, until the vision he fought for, of an Africa standing tall without foreign permission, becomes nothing more than a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones. As the financial press tightens its grip and diplomacy turns icy, another arm of this war moves silently beneath the surface. This is where violence is recycled as a controlled political tool. The insurgents who hit Guibo, they weren't rogue soldiers on a religious crusade. That's the cover story. In reality, they were part of a calculated performance, unleashed not to conquer, but to destabilize with surgical precision. These groups aren't independent. Their weapons, rented, their backers, invisible. Here's how it works. These insurgents don't care about territory. They don't want to govern or draft policy. What they do, over and over, is strike at the critical points in the state's infrastructure. A military base here, a road there, a grain reserve or hydroelectric dam. Just enough to disrupt, provoke, and expose the vulnerabilities of the system. Then they vanish. It's not about ideology, it's about function. These insurgents don't need to understand geopolitics. They don't need a seat at the negotiating table. Their job is simple: to apply pressure enough to force someone else's agenda through the back door. One attack in the north, and suddenly a foreign security proposal reappears. Coincidence? Or is it part of a bigger, unseen strategy? Ask any analyst familiar with the patterns seen in Libya, Mali, or Sudan, and they'll tell you the same thing. First come the raids, then the rumours, and finally the vultures. But in Burkina Faso this time, the script is being resisted, and that's what makes the situation so dangerous for those who wish to control it. Ibrahim Traoré isn't following the typical playbook. He's not begging for help from the usual powers that be. He's not calling on the international community to mediate the situation. He's not allowing foreign troops from the same governments that fund NGOs to swoop in under the guise of bringing stability. That breaks the cycle. And that's why the insurgents have been turned up like a volume dial. More attacks, more rumours, more sensational headlines. But the real question is, who's turning that dial? Look closely at the flow of arms. These affiliate groups, they don't manufacture weapons. The violence isn't being coordinated by some wild-eyed rebel commander in the bush. It's men in suits, corporate middlemen, foreign handlers, and retired intelligence officers, all working under the radar, in deniable cover. They're not launching missiles. They're authorizing arms shipments. They're not dropping bombs. They're approving payments to informants and tribal security forces who keep the machine running. The chaos is carefully crafted to appear local, but the fingerprints, they're foreign. The goal here isn't total collapse, it's managed disruption. Just enough violence to weaken Burkina Faso's state machinery. Just enough fear to erode public trust. Just enough to make Traoré look overwhelmed, but not enough to spark a full-blown revolution. After all, total collapse would mean losing control, and control is exactly what they want to maintain. So, these insurgents, these so-called enemies of the West, often appear at the most convenient times, serving the interests of their foreign backers. This isn't an accident, it's a tactic. Traoré knows it. His inner circle knows it. And increasingly, the people are starting to suspect it. But suspicion isn't enough anymore. Not when proxy warfare is disguised as internal unrest. Because when a nation bleeds, but the wounds always open at the most opportune moments for its enemies, it's not a coincidence, it's an operation. And in Burkina Faso, that operation has a name: regime recalibration. The real question is, who's next on the list? Is it Traoré? When most leaders are surrounded by pressure, they either fold or freeze. But Captain Ibrahim Traoré is doing something entirely different. Instead of reinforcing old structures, he's building a new state model, one forged under immense pressure, designed to survive without international approval, and meant to inspire others across the continent. While insurgents continue their attacks in the north and foreign financiers circle the economy, Traoré is laying the foundations of a parallel Burkina Faso, one deliberately disconnected from the systems that made it vulnerable in the first place. And he's doing it all quietly, away from the world's watchful eyes. First, Burkina Faso is taking control of its domestic production, not for war, but for sovereignty. Over the past few months, the country has redirected emergency funds toward homegrown food processing, small-scale energy grids, and rural defence networks that operate outside the formal bureaucracy. These aren't publicised announcements, they're quiet, localised revolutions. The message couldn't be clearer: if they cut us off, we'll grow through the cracks. Second, Traoré is reshaping trade and commerce by creating new economic corridors that bypass traditional choke points. In collaboration with Mali and Niger, trade routes are being rerouted inland, away from Western-controlled ports. Additionally, a new partnership with Algeria is reportedly underway, aiming to open up a land and supply route to the Mediterranean through the Sahelian region. A logistical challenge, but one that's worth the effort. This is about more than just logistics. It's a symbolic act of rejecting inherited geography, the colonial maps designed to keep nations dependent on Western railways and coastlines. Traoré is creating his own paths forward. Third, Burkina Faso is digitalizing its resistance. Traoré has quietly commissioned local developers to build secure offline communication platforms. This decentralized system will ensure that even if foreign-backed forces disrupt national networks, civilians will still have a way to coordinate. Why does this matter? Because control over the narrative has always been the first step in toppling a regime. The one who speaks last speaks loudest. Traoré knows this, and he's preparing for the day when information becomes a battlefield. Fourth, and perhaps most strategically, Traoré is turning ideology into institutional memory. Across schools, youth councils, civil training programs, and even military academies, a new doctrine is being instilled. Burkina Faso must never again be run by external forces. This isn't just hollow nationalism, it's a survival strategy. History shows that any revolution not anchored in a solid doctrine is vulnerable to infiltration. Traoré understands that ideas outlast bullets. What leaders like Sankara couldn't finish, he's determined to complete, building institutions that won't need Western approval to function. And yet, all of this is being done under siege. While insurgents attack supply lines, while foreign investments dry up, and while covert operatives probe his inner circle, Traoré is quietly building a nation that refuses to bend. This isn't just a response, it's a counter-offensive, one fought not with force, but with foresight. Ibrahim Traoré seems to understand a brutal truth. Burkina Faso might not win by outgunning its enemies, but it can win by outlasting their attention span. While the empire relies on shock and disruption, Traoré is betting on slow, steady permanence. While his adversaries scramble for headlines, he's building for history. So, while the world waits for another explosion, the real story might be unfolding quietly in the background. In the midst of a siege, a new nation is being born. Traoré has survived the ambush in Djibo. He's sidestepped isolation and begun building a new Burkina Faso, despite the ongoing siege. But survival isn't the goal, it's just the first test. What comes next won't be a skirmish on the battlefield or another media storm. It will be something far more dangerous. The moment when his people, his system, begin to ask the question that every revolution fears. How long can we hold on? Traoré's greatest challenge now isn't avoiding the next attack. It's proving that his vision can deliver faster than fear can spread. He has to move beyond simply resisting collapse. He must start delivering results. Because while insurgents can terrify a region, only internal disillusionment can truly break a country. This is where external forces will double down, not with brute force, but with temptation. Offers of discreet deals, technical assistance, and humanitarian corridors will be dangled in front of the people, all with strings attached. All of this will come wrapped in urgency, presented as help for the people. But it's not help. It's a way to lure the nation back into dependency, not through violence, but through fatigue. If the people lose patience, if rice prices soar again, if salaries stall, or if roads stay broken for too long, the voices that once cheered for sovereignty might start to wonder, was it worth it? This is where most revolutions falter, not on the battlefield, but in the waiting room. Traoré's mission now is threefold. First, consolidate loyalty before convenience takes over. He can't afford to have fence-sitters and saboteurs within his administration, those who smile in meetings but quietly place calls to embassies after hours. Not now. He needs unwavering loyalty. Second, decentralized pressure. His survival can't rest solely on Ouagadougou. Regional governors, village chiefs, youth brigades, they must be brought into the recovery, not just as supporters, but as active builders. Every province must feel ownership of the national project. If they see it as Traoré's alone, they'll watch it crumble. If they see it as their own, they'll defend it like family. Third, and most critically, Traoré must tell the truth before someone else tells a louder lie. He can't sugarcoat what's ahead. The nation is under attack, not just by insurgents with rifles, but by contractors, by banks, by smiles and suits. The people must understand that this isn't a normal time. It's a front line disguised as policy, a war disguised as aid. If Traoré names the enemy, explains the stakes, and shows the people what's being built and why it matters, he keeps the fire alive. But if he stays silent too long, lets doubt creep in, if he allows the narrative to drift without taking control, then Djibo won't be the beginning. It'll be the blueprint, refined and aimed straight at his heart. Because his enemies hold one final card: patience. They've seen Africa rise before, heard the sparks of sovereignty flare up, only to burn out when the world looked away. Their hope is simple, that Traoré runs out of momentum before they run out of time. Now, the burden isn't just on him, it's on everyone watching. Because if he falls, it won't be in the headlines. It will be in silence. Do you think Traoré is that easy to break? What do you think he will do next? Let us know in the comments section. What do you think Traoré must do next? Do you want to see more videos like this one? If so, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.